Hello and welcome to On Walking the Way. We don't often think much about the way we understand the world. The short answer is that we know and understand the world through stories, and we share these stories through language. Now, this seems obvious when we think about it. After all, if you ask someone to introduce themselves, they will do it by telling a story about themselves. Stories are the core of culture. Culture is built on a collection of shared stories and experiences that come together to shape our opinions on everything, often without our conscious knowledge. Christian culture is based, of course, on Christian stories and experiences, while Buddhist, Hindu, Islamic, Animist, and various secular cultures all base their assumptions on a set of different stories. When people say things like, everyone knows that, or obviously, they're referencing common stories that they feel everyone should know and respect. A culture war now is a fight over which stories are legitimate and foundational. This is why people fight over statues and the real meaning, quote, of the Thanksgiving story in the U.S. On the surface, these arguments sound trivial, and by themselves they may be, but somehow we all know, almost instinctively, that these stories define us and our culture. This is our history. To change it is to change our culture and identity. Stories are incredibly powerful. Today I thought it would be good to think about that power. I'm currently teaching a biblical core course to a group of young missionary trainees. Now, the course has many goals, but one of the primary goals is to teach people how to read the Bible in literary and historical contexts. To help them with context, we read the entire Bible in story order, beginning in the Old Testament with all of its often awkward stories and events. As I introduce the Old Testament and its various literature types, my students are always amazed at how much of it is stories and poetry. Spoiler, stories, poetry, and songs make up the vast majority of material in the Old Testament. But it gets interesting when I explain to them how biblical narratives in the Old Testament rarely interpret themselves. They simply tell the story, complete with all the most shocking and at times embarrassing details, and move on, leaving the interpretation to the reader or hearer. At this point, jaws often visibly drop, and someone will ask, how are we to interpret these stories? And sometimes, why doesn't God just tell us what it all means? Now, I can sympathize with their questions, but these questions overlook the point, I think. Why does God use stories, poetry, and songs to teach us? That's the real question. Stories have an advantage over other teaching styles. Direct, specific statements typically have a sell-by date, and by that I mean the more specific a statement gets, the more narrowly it applies. The Bible is an ancient collection of writings. These stories carry truths that are far more timeless than specific statements about situations and events that no longer occur, or advice that no longer directly applies to the modern world. You see, stories can carry multi-dimensional truth. Direct statements, for the most part, are what they are. A truly inspired story has layers and layers of applications and truth, and the Bible is truly inspired. A better question than why all these stories would be, why have these particular stories been preserved? We learn by example. We catch and absorb more than we study and learn, and when a story becomes a part of us, it guides us and teaches us in ways we cannot always identify, but over time, the collective effect of these absorbed stories is undeniable. So what does the point of this little excursion into the power of stories? Well, we need to watch what we eat, so to speak. Our world is filled with stories, some true, some false, some dangerously false. The most dangerous ones do not necessarily come from people we think are rude or on the, quote, wrong side of the issue. The most dangerous lies are the ones we accept without examination. The ones we feel are right because everyone says so. The world is wrong in a great many ways. We should never accept the world's so-called common knowledge uncritically. Remember the warning of Jesus in the Gospel of John. If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. Now, this passage is not easy, but it is an important reality check. A story is not true simply because it is commonly believed and often repeated. We need to fill our minds with the right stories, with God's stories, even when they are difficult to understand, because stories shape our thinking, our lives, and our futures. We need to relearn to tell stories to each other because stories anchor our identities and guide our choices. I'll close today with this final encouragement from Paul. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. Have a great week.